It's that time of the week again where we give you the latest and greatest information here on Magic the Gathering Arena across the formats, best of one and best of three for Friday Night Magic. So thank you for tuning in. As always, you'll find that information down below in the timestamps. Find what makes sense to you. On top of that, if you get a question, if you get a comment throughout, do let me know, because I love to hear from you, and come swing by the Discord server and say hello. We got a great active community, and thank you to everyone there. Lots of fun stuff going on. Lots of Mythic players posting their fun decks. This is a great meta. We're having fun. On top of that, before I get into it here, we just came off the back of Magic Worlds. So with that, let's dive into what Wilds of Eldraine has brought us here today, and let's check it out. Now, again, down below, we got great ways to support the channel and support, so thank you for tuning in. However, let's get into today's weekly episode. All right, so here's what we got going on. A couple of key pieces. Lots of things have been bouncing around. We played a lot of decks, or a few decks here, particularly over the last week. Things have been moving. Big pieces that's came in, 4-color control. Additionally, we're seeing Esper Legends here towards the top. Lots of things bouncing around. Golgari mid-range. Mono white humans still staying towards the top in terms of that win rate. Mono red aggro, still a very aggro-esque deck as always, and you can see that by how many people are playing at 20%. And when we ran our mono red aggro, we hit 3 in a row. So you can check that out here on the channel. So let's again take a quick look. So mono white humans followed by Esper Legends, mono red aggro, 4-color control. At one point, this was actually, I believe, the top. Then we have Selesnya enchantments, mono red burn, mono blue tempo, and then Golgari midrange. Here on the right, heavily dominated by those top 3. Interesting to see, obviously, Golgari midrange down here, but still one of the most played decks. That's a pretty important thing to keep an eye on and pay attention to. And then as we come down here, you can start to see that popularity. There was a dip in mono red, but it's pulled back up. Here you see that Golgari mid-range strengthening. You see mono white human strengthening. Everything else kind of coming down, but these other ones, 4-color control really popping in, and Esper Legends really popping in. Probably a thing coming off the back of Magic Worlds. Now here, what we do see also on win rate, here's what I was talking about. Esper Legends also popping up there. We see that mono white humans is slowly starting to come off its highs. We also see a nice pop there in Esper Legends, kind of trending down. However, we also see 4-color control bouncing up and around, like I was talking about, and a lot of the other lists. Unfortunately, mono black mid range. But let's flip into tempo and everything else. Is where it's at here, and also trending down or sideways. So that's pretty information for us here at Standard Best of 1 across Bronze to Mythic. Again, we're very close to the end of September though, so let's drill into Mythic and see what's going on at Mythic. A little bit different space here. We got mono white humans, mono red aggro, 4-color control, Esper control, Gruul aggro in there, Selesnya enchantments, Azor's control, and Golgari mid-range. We've seen some pretty cool lists that are new between Golgari aggro and also Azor's control, so that's cool to see the difference between Mythic as well as the broad range stuff, because it's still a pretty diverse meta when we look at that, despite a lot of the heavy things here towards the top of the list. Now, again, keep those things in mind. We're almost into October. My gosh, the year's almost over. That's crazy to think about. However, let's go ahead and check best of 3. Here in best of 3, we do have 4-color control at the top now. Esper Legends, mono white humans, mono red aggro, dimmer midrange, Esper control, Golgari midrange, and Bant control. Lots of things going on. Heavy in terms of Golgari midrange, 4-color control, and mono red aggro. When we begin to look at the popularity over time, again, big spike in Golgari midrange, a big spike in 4-color control, definitely coming out of Worlds. So that's important to see. And then again, similar with some of these other spikes like Esper Legends and Bant control, similar things that we're going to pay attention to and keep an eye on. Now, win rate over time, you can see that shift in Esper Legends coming down. You can see that 4-color control coming up, the mono red trending down, and a few other things happening there as well. Now, as we take a deeper dive into Mythic, here's what we have in Mythic. We do have Esper Legends at the top, 4-color control, 5-color domain in there, mono white humans, Esper control, Golgari midrange, mono red aggro, and Orzhov midrange. So a few different things. Again, top 3 are really the same, top 4 probably similar. but a lot of things still moving around. And again, influence coming out of Magic Worlds. So that concludes standard best of 1 and best of 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at Alchemy. Alchemy here, we do have 4-color legends in there, almost at 70%. So that's definitely different than what we've been seeing previously. We got mono black midrange, Nazgul, host of other things there. And then here on the right, mono black midrange. 4-color legends, though, being pretty important there. And I said control, 4-color legends. This is what I meant to say. And then here again, you can see some of the trending. And again, that 4-color legends doing really, really nice. Something for us to keep an eye on as we move into Mythic. Not a lot of players on that. And that's unfortunate here as we get into the end of the month, which really talks about that health of that format. Best of 3, similar thing. Mono black control. Time for us to move on. We're then going to go ahead and take a look at historic. Historic, we do have Is It Wizards at the top, and we have Is It Wizards most played, followed by Rakdos Midrange, Sultai Dredge, Mono Green Elves, Mono Green Devotion, Mono Black Control, Mono Red Aggro, and the Paradox Storm in there still. Now, Is It Wizards is clearly well in front of everything else in terms of popularity. Everything else is pretty tight in terms of meta. And again, similar trending stuff for Is It Wizards. Interestingly enough, we do see that switch on Rakdos there. The other things trending like Mono Green Devotion and a couple of others like Rakdos Midrange then trending down. And that was Mono Red Aggro. And then when we look at the win rate over time, we did see Sultai Dredge popping out ahead. However, Is It Wizards has certainly recovered. And a few other things like Mono Green Elves starting to pop back up there, and a few others coming up. So important stuff there. Let's go ahead and look at Mythic. A few changes at Mythic. We do have Golgari Yawgmoth, followed by Mono Green Devotion and Dimmer Control, and Mono Black Control, followed by Is It Wizards. So that's a pretty big difference between the isolated meta in Mythic and everything else. So let's keep an eye on that as the weeks continue to roll by here for the year. Again, let's pull it all the way back. We're going to go ahead and take a look at best of 3. Best of 3, we still have Golgari Yawgmoth again. Abzan combo, something new. I don't think that was in there last week. Mono Green Devotion, Rakdos Midrange, Rakdos Sacrifice, Dimmer Control, Jund Midrange, Mono Black. And then here on the right, again, heavily dominated by Mono Green Devotion, and the other two here, Rakdos Midrange, Golgari Yawgmoth. Here you can see everything moving around. That's a pretty big adjustment. Midrange coming back up, but then when we look at the win rate, Golgari Yawgmoth just absolutely crushing it here. And then you can see kind of how some of these other things are bouncing around. While Abzan combo is actually probably the most consistent deck, minus Jund Midrange and Rakdos Sacrifice there. Let's go ahead and take a look at Mythic there for best of 3. A little bit less Golgari Yawgmoth, Dimmer Control, Rakdos Midrange, and Mono Green Devotion. So with that, that is going to conclude Historic. Let's go ahead and move into our last best of 1 and best of 3 here with Explorer. Explorer's got Mono White Humans also at the top. Boros Heroic, Selesnya Angels, Mono Red Aggro, Rakdos Sacrifice, Mono Green Devotion, Abzan Greasefang, Azor's Control. Here on the right, you can see everything's pretty tight for the most part in terms of popularity. And as we come down here, we do see that shift downwards. When Wilds came out, we see Selesnya Angels and everything else kind of trending down, except for Rakdos Sacrifice really trending up, and then Mono White Humans also starting to get there. And then when we look at win rates, we do have Boros Heroic there doing pretty good, while everything else kind of fell and then back up. And then we do see that Mono White Humans also starting to go back up. Everything else also kind of doing that, which represents, again, a fairly interesting shift in the meta to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and take a look at Mythic. Mythic, we do have a few things changing here. Mono White Humans, Rakdos Sacrifice, and Selesnya Angels. Let's pull all the way back and check out Explorer and Best of 3. Here's a couple key pieces here. We got Boros Heroic, Azor's Spirits, 5-color Fires, Mono Green Devotion, Rakdos Sacrifice, Azor's Lotus Field, Azor's Control, and Rakdos Midrange. Now, looking on the right here, we do see really Mono Green Devotion, Rakdos Midrange separating themselves, and then really the next 3 and the next 3. To be fair, 5 to 3.5% only represents 1.5% difference, which is pretty tight. In terms of popularity here, you can see how these two have been bouncing around between Devotion and Rakdos Midrange. You do see that Sacrifice falling off a little bit. Everything else fairly steady Eddie there at the 4.5%. And then when we look at win rate over time, Boros Heroic definitely more consistent than everything else here, as everything else really bounces around. So those are some important things for us to continue to pay attention to. There's that mono white humans in there as well. Very, very important to kind of take a look at. Now let's go ahead and look at Mythic. Much smaller here. We do have Azorius Lowest Field, Azorius Pyrrhus, Monogreen's Devotion, Rakdos Midrange, and then on the meta side, in terms of popularity, very, very important for us to keep an eye on as things evolve. And again, interesting to see how different the Mythic capacity is relative to everything else. Ooh, that concludes our best of 1 and best of 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at Historic Brawl. Brawl, what do we have different here? We do have Ragavan continue to dominate. The first sliver in there, Roscoe, Emoti, Italia, Troxa, and Irret. So we do have Irret back in. This is a WoW, Wilds of Eldraine commander here, or again, Historic commander. And then here on the right, we do have everything else, 3% to 1.5%, a little less, giving you an interesting take on what's happening. We do see everything else in terms of popularity kind of trending down, except for Emoti with a little bit of a spike. For Sliver, similar. Interesting to see that. And then as we look at that win rate, good old Ragavan doing even better. Here, this first Sliver doing fairly well. And then we see that dip on Atroxa actually coming back up. And a few other things. If we take a ret, we do see positive win rate here, negative, and we say that in terms of less than 50%, and then getting close back to there. But certainly a love of the Historic Brawl players. So that concludes everything here today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found a lot of great information here and decks that you can consider to play and as you navigate the meta. Now, with that, we do have a ton of these lists here on the channel. We got more coming all the time, so absolutely stay tuned and check those out. And on top of that, the weekly series here. With that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Thank you for the likes and the subs as we continue to grow such an amazing community. On top of that, I do have memberships. I want to say thank you to all the members already. In there, we have something for everyone. Great tiers that give you nice, cool things like emotes and icons. On top of that, down below are other great ways to support the channel and stay in the know. We do have affiliate stuff there, so thank you for that. And on top of that, if you're looking for some cards, we got some great links that you can take advantage of. With that, I want to say I hope you again enjoyed the episode. If you got a question, if you got a comment, do let me know. I love to hear from you. Come swing by the Discord server. Till next week for Friday Night Meta here. Stay tuned because we will have more coming your way, and we got a ton of more great decks here that you can explore on the channel and more coming your way. All right, with that said, let's continue onwards and upwards and see how things evolve here for Wilds of Eldraine. Take care.